Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on as-a-service offerings brought to you by Cloud and Data Center Transformation. I'm Christy Fatry, Marketing Manager at Insight, and will be your moderator today. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you're looking at can be completely customized. You can resize and move any of the windows that you have open. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions from this webcast will be captured. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. The help guide covers common technical issues. I would now like to turn over this presentation to our presenters, Kent Christensen and Juan Orlandini. Kent, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Christy, and we're excited to have you on. We've been talking about as-a-service to many of our clients, and they're finding it incredibly valuable information. Our goal here today is not to specifically pitch any product, but to help you understand the as-a-service environments are changing the way a lot of organizations are going to look at consuming infrastructure to run their applications. So I'm going to go into some of the details of the programs, but prior to that, I'm going to have Juan Orlandini, our Chief Architect, introduce himself and go through a little bit of insight about Insight and the market.
Hey, thank you, Kent. And good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. As Kent said, I'm Juan Orlandini, Chief Architect for Insight's Cloud and Data Center Transformation Solution Area. It's a mouthful. We're the infrastructure folks that help modernize both on-premises and cloud infrastructures. So if you're not familiar with Insight, let me cover that real quick. Insight's a global organization. There's about 11,000 teammates globally. And what we've done is divided ourselves into go-to-markets. We have three primary go-to-markets that are supported by supply chain optimization that is company-wide. Digital innovation is our set of teammates that really focus on the digital transformation. This is the teammates that can help you write the next generation app, whether it's on a public cloud or private cloud, hybrid model, doesn't really matter. That's what they do. Kent and I sit under what's called CDCT, which is our organization that helps modernize those platforms on top of which you do these transformational journeys. And then Connected Workforce is our organization that helps our clients modernize and optimize the end user experience that they have, whether it's internal end users or external end users. So let me skip over this one slide and jump into this. So each one of our solution areas has got a slightly different value proposition. The supply chain optimization I mentioned is really helping our clients that once you go through a transformational journey or
Juan, if you can hear me, your mic just went quiet, if that's true, Christy.
Correct. I'm not hearing Juan either.
Sorry, I think Juan might be having a technical difficulty. I'll try to pick this up. So we do have 4 specific solution areas at Insight. We talked a little bit about cloud and data center transformation, really helping you with your transformation of your organizations, covering data center to cloud. Traditionally, Insight was built on a supply chain model, which is getting you, awesome technology, massive quantities, software at, very efficient. Usually, a lot of times that means lowest price. Connected Workforce, we all had to get connected in a big hurry early last year, and that is a leading provider of, helping people understand from devices to connectivity to, we were doing some awesome case studies about wireless access to, underserved communities, things like that. And then digital innovation, that's all about the application. So cloud and data center transformation and digital innovation many times work hand in hand with each other. Digital innovation is doing things like IoT, AI, things like that. And of course, we always say at Insight, in order to do digital information, you need data center transformation, so that you have the network to deliver some of those awesome applications. Christy, if you see Juan jump back in.
Back.
Yeah. Okay.
I am. Sorry about that.
Moving.
Don't know what happened. I had to dial back, and this platform dropped me for whatever reason. Maybe I was saying boring stuff. So, as Kent was mentioning, we do have all of those solution areas, but within CDCT, what we really see is that if you're going to go and modernize either legacy infrastructures, or you're going to go consume a multi-cloud or hybrid cloud environment, there's a lot of complexity that goes around it. So you have a number of vendors that are in the storage, the network, the security, the data protection, the public cloud providers. They're all sorts of different things. And we do have partnerships with all the folks that are on this slide and all of that. But it's really a lot to go learn and to go figure out how to go about that. But what's interesting is that all of these vendors, regardless of who they are, they've all come up with as a service consumption model. So I'm going to transition into why that's happening. There's a lot of volatility because of the pandemic that we're still in the midst of. They see that leadership within client organizations are seeing that they need to be a little bit cash savvy and preserve some, do some cash preservation. There's really a shift to go from save to grow to save to transform that's happening. So how do I save my money so that I can grow my business is becoming old, and it's really, I need to start transforming how do I engage. And the last year has really highlighted the clients that we saw that were able to adapt and very rapidly pivot to the changing landscape are the ones that didn't just survive, they actually thrived in the last year's turmoil. And what we're also seeing is that there's a huge shift in how clients want to go consume this infrastructure that's available to them. And in fact, Gartner and several of them have upped their predictions as to how much is going to be consumed as a service. Every year for the last few years, they've gone from 15 to 40 to now 70%. Of their prediction is that 70% of infrastructure is going to be consumed as a service. On top of that, there's some cloud optimizations that are happening that are really driving a lot of this behavior, both on-premises and in the cloud. Workload automation remains really, really high, but very tightly associated with that is this reduction of waste. Automation is great, but a lot of times you end up with ghost resources that are laid all over the place, and you got to go understand how to optimize that. And that happens both in the public cloud and on-premises. We've heard it for decades now of VM sprawl on an on-premise environment. That's the same thing as ghost resources in the public cloud. How do you optimize for that, and how do you do that? And what clients are really looking for is elastic services. How do I create services that help me automate, optimize, and then grow and shrink as I need more or less resources in my environment? And that's what these services do. And before Kent and I dive into how these are generally organized, it might help if I covered a little bit of the terminology that we're going to use. So CapEx, if you're familiar with it, is really when you go and buy stuff, and you're buying all of it up front. So, hey, I'm going to use simple terms in storage. I buy a whole array with so many terabytes of petabytes of storage, and you include maintenance costs for 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever you end up doing. And the interesting thing about that is that it's a much higher initial outlay because you're buying for all of it, whether you're going to use all of it day one or not. So typically you probably are not because you're buying in advance of what your needs are. So your initial short-term outlay is much, much higher than if you're buying as a service. But over time, it actually can be a lower cost for you because you're sweating that asset potentially for a little bit longer. OpEx traditionally has been a lease. And there's some FASB rules that apply to this in terms of reporting because if it's, and Ken can get into this a lot more, if you are doing a lease, you actually have to report it as actually an asset if it's not structured appropriately. There is typically a minimum spend. There's typically lower monthly costs, but they do come at a premium. If you were to look, again, in the storage example, on a per terabyte, per petabyte, whatever your yardstick is, it's going to cost you more. But the flexibility is that you don't have to pay for it all up front. So if your need is short term, you might end up paying per terabyte more, but for that time period, you end up paying less. And there's as a service, and this is what we're going to spend the majority of the time talking about here, is that there's a lower initial outlay. It does flex up and down. So not only can it go up in consumption as you need more, if you start using less of it, it will go down. It could be the lowest cost if your workloads are highly variable. So if your workloads vary in capacity, go up or down, and it's very, very variable, this could be the absolutely the best way to consume resources. However, if your resources are static or they tend to just go up in consumption, it is probably going to be the highest cost because there's a premium associated with the flexibility, and it is not a lease, so it's not seen as an OpEx type of lease under the FASB rules. And then the final one is cloud consumption, and this is what you get from the public cloud providers. There's the lowest initial outlay. Literally, it's almost zero. What you charge for. It is the most flexible. There's essentially infinite capacity. You can buy exabytes of capacity on demand on the public cloud. You can flex up and flex down. It is potentially the lowest price if you manage it very well. So sticking with the storage, if you use the appropriate storage tiers in the public providers at the appropriate time and you move data up and down those storage tiers, this is going to be the lowest cost available. But doing that is extremely challenging. And if you don't do it, it could become potentially the highest cost because you're paying for premium level of tiers when you're using the data in the lowest tier kind of a mode. And there are hidden costs associated. Don't forget that in the public cloud, everything is metered. Stuff that you already have included, for example, IOs or bandwidths or ingress versus egress, those things on an on-premises mode or an as-a-service mode, those are just baked in. In the public cloud, those are metered, and you pay for all of that stuff. And it can be surprising if you're not careful about it. So why are clients looking for as a service? It's a consumption model typical to the last thing, but similar to what I just said in the last one. It's an upfront price. You know exactly what you're paying for. You only pay for what you use. You scale up or scale down. It is a financial tool, most importantly, that cash preservation thing that I mentioned earlier, that you don't have to spend all of the money up front. There's no CapEx purchase. There's no assets on the book. And if you need to stop using it, you just stop using it, and you're done, all right? And you avoid all of those FASB lease rules that we talked about. It can potentially also be a bridge to a cloud strategy. And actually, it's a bridge both ways. So it could be that you're an on-premise consumer today, and you're trying to move into a public cloud mode. Well, you need maybe to upgrade your infrastructure before you do these moves to the public cloud. But it could also be that you're somebody that started in the public cloud or is consuming public cloud but maybe wants to repatriate or have a similar kinds of service both on premises and in the cloud. And this gives you the flexibility to do that bridging as well. So from on-premises to the cloud and cloud back to on-premises and in both directions. And it also very much lends itself to reduced risk posture from a business uncertainty perspective. So if you don't know that a product that you've developed is going to grow or not grow, or if you don't know whether you're going to remain on premises for a short term or a long term, if you don't know, lots of you don't know, this gives you the ultimate flexibility because you can flex up or flex down and with very, very little consequence other than making sure that you stay current with your payments, and that's it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kent. And Kent, maybe you can take us through who and all is doing this and why they're doing it the way they're doing it.
Awesome, Juan. Again, that was a great overview. And as you talk about why people are doing this, I'm actually going to give a couple of examples of clients because, that will help you understand what they saw in the value, which means what they saw in the business outcome for them, the business value to them, which is why you do this. So I'll start with a statement. Insight's a leading provider of as a service. When has anybody ever tried to sell you something that didn't try to tell you they have the best product or the best offering? But we really have a significant leadership position, and some of that, for those who know us, may understand why. If you buy some of the products on the screen, over half of the customers, 75%, I'd rather call you than call an OEM because you understand not just that product, but also my environment. And so we've always had direct support services. We've had that for many, many years. Some of our clients, prefer to have us even actually take more active management for them. So we have managed services. We have direct support agreements. Because we're a $3 billion data center integrator, that makes us one of the top 5 in the world, which means we have a lot of gravitas, which means, we have a lot of partners. Now, when you look at other people in the market, whether it's companies that just didn't get here first from an OEM perspective, there's some listed in the Gartner document on the screen, others that are trying to catch up, but some of the people that might sell you goods and services, we have always understood that because we do managed services and support services, that we value services consumption. A lot of organizations still want to sell you something and bill you net 30. And so going to a services-based model is going to be a challenge for them. Insight as an organization, you'll hear it on all of our earnings calls. We've been a leading cloud services provider. Why is somebody selling data center products actually selling $1 billion of Azure services and AWS services, and so we were fit. As a result, we've been actually talking to all of the organizations that were getting into this market years before it really started to take off. So it's interesting as we look into the Gartner report that, they said in 2019 it was less than 1% of the market, then 15, then 40, and now they're saying 70% of the market. I don't know when they've ever increased forecasts over 18 months from 15 to 70%, but that's what they're seeing. So you can imagine everybody in the market is kind of coming in and jumping in. And a lot of these partners actually, work with us to help build these models. So, a lot of other integrators are getting into this market, but we do have a really good position here. And really our point today is to help you understand what's going on in the market, not the particular products, but overall what they look like. So if we look at the as a service without going into the details, the first thing we do, Juan pointed out some of the challenges with leasing. We saw that fall off the table once FASB came in and said, look, leasing is no different than buying. You just put a mortgage on your house. You still have a major capital outlay. It still goes in your books, et cetera. And so when all of the partners come up and say, I've got a service-based offering, one of the first things we do is, well, how do you price it? Many of the organizations that started first in our recommendation is get transparent service-based pricing. In the case of storage, how much is a terabyte of a premium level of service per month? And that doesn't have to do with your hardware configuration. That has to do with your service offering. So, cloud pricing is transparent. How much is a small, medium, or large T-shirt? How much is a terabyte, et cetera. Another group isn't comfortable with that model, and they do configuration. They say, well, I'll tell you the price after I understand what you want, how much hardware I'm going to take, and I configure the hardware. And you might find it actually goes into your contract as part of the agreement. Now, depending on your finance organization, you may look at that, and even if they're going to take ownership, your finance organization may say, well, that's just a lease because it's a really defined set of hardware, whereas the ones on the left, it's a service-based offering, and they're going to deliver whatever hardware is required to deliver that service to you. So a difference there, a nuance there. So what are the common attributes of the as-a-service offerings? They all are fairly straightforward. Again, these are the service-based, right? So in storage, it's usually two variables. How much is the capacity? I want, 10 terabytes, 50 terabytes, a petabyte. How much is that per month based on that service level? And that's the other variable. You have extreme performance, premium performance. Those are usually your kind of all flash. You have standard, usually your hybrid type of stuff, and then you have long-term capacity storage. Those two things tell you your price. For compute, it's usually placed either on a server, which has X cores, Y memory, or you can divide that up by VMs or database images or things like that. There's typically a contract. In other words, they are going to ship infrastructure into your data center that will support those services. It's just like buying services on AWS, but in AWS, the hardware is sitting in their data center, and you connect to it however you connect to it and leverage it that way. In this case, they brought the infrastructure from the cloud to your data center. And so as a result, there's some commitment to set it up. Usually it's maybe 50 terabytes of storage, et cetera. And then, with that, so 1 year, say 50 terabytes, which could be as low as a couple $1,000 a month to get going. And then there's a rate set. So now that I know it's $50 a terabyte or whatever, I know how much it costs to expand. Typically, you're always going to get an extra 20%, whether it's servers or compute, just there in case you need it. You don't pay for it unless you use it, so there's standby or on-demand mode. As mentioned, the terms are 1 to 5 years. You can choose, do you want to pay every month, and it'd be whatever you agreed to plus anything you use on an on-demand basis, or you can pay up front, and some of the programs will even give you like a 10% discount. In every case, the OEM is going to retain the title, so you're not owning, buying, taking care of, and feeding the equipment. The OEM is keeping title and really just delivering services. Of course, there's equipment. It will be in your data center or hosted somewhere. And then, I think one of the important things is that you don't have to do this one at a time. So, anybody could call up 4 or 5 vendors and say, if you provided me compute, and you provided me network, and you provided me cloud, and you provided me storage, I would have, some sort of like a converged infrastructure, et cetera. We do that all the time. So, in the graphic, that it's very common for a client to say, I've got storage, I've got compute, I might have some networking components, I want to use cloud for backup, et cetera. And we'll put that all together and give you one monthly price, if that makes sense. So those are some of the attributes. We can dig into the details of any of the different programs, but you would not be surprised if you said, how does this work? And you just understood the last, these basic attributes. And most of the programs, with our guidance, fall into, a program similar to this. So I keep clicking on the wrong thing. So why storage as a service? These were the first guys, and I think even years ago, people were doing storage as a service, and it made a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. One, storage is one of those things that everybody overbuilds, right? You can never run out. So it's very common for people to build 30% more, 40% more than they actually know they need because they have to manage for the peak over some period of time. So in this case, just the concept, you pay for what you use as you need it. If your clients are external or internal, you align it to their demand. You don't pay up front for it. You pay for it as you use it. You have a lot of agility. Not just, again, when you buy something, a house, storage, et cetera, you kind of bought a configuration in a service. You can expand it. You can move it to different service levels. On the chart here on the right, maybe hard to see, you can see, some of the different service levels where, 6,000 down to 128 IOPS or, and then some of the rate cards, which are transparent. It's not going to take you long. So we can show you, here's a couple of organizations, their service levels, their rates, very transparent to that. And you can move things from one service to another. So it's not like if you bought a configuration that didn't have flash and all of a sudden you said, oh, I need high performance, you can get there. They create hybrid models. So a lot of organizations will say, look, I want to do my backup to cloud. That's an easy way to use cloud. I want to DR with cloud. I want to integrate some of my applications to cloud so that things I don't need quite often are there, et cetera. Again, we talked about the transparent rates. Here's the punchline. One of the reasons that they are so eager to publish the rate card for the storage as a service on-prem is that you can quickly Google what cloud services cost, and you'll see that they're at least 2x. So in the case, on the top, we have, for example, it's a NetApp rate card. And if you look there and you see, it's kind of cut off, but you say, all flash, what they call premium, Looks like it's $79 list price. You probably won't pay that per terabyte. Gee, I wonder how much NetApp, same company, sells that same premium level of service on AWS, Google, or Azure. So you could Google Cloud Volumes AWS and see a pricing, or Azure NetApp Files, for Azure pricing, and you'd find out it was between $200 and $300 a terabyte. So this is the reason that they wanted to publish this, because a lot of people might go to cloud and assume that storage is hard to get to cloud. But even once I get there, it can be very expensive, and a lot of people have to, actually get the bill and realize that was, just the starting point of the cost. But this is very transparent. If it's $80 a terabyte at most to have it on-prem, and it's $200 to $300 a terabyte to have it in the public cloud for the same level of service, that's why the storage as a service wanted to make sure that you had these rates easily transparent so that you could make the right decision for your organization. So I want to go through a couple of examples. One of them happens to be a federal agency. Obviously, the amount of money that's coming out of our federal organizations is, significant, using T for trillions. And so there's a lot of money, and you would think that money is no issue. This was actually one of our first clients. It was a federal agency. And one of the things they were trying to do is figure out, hey, I want to buy, in this case it was NetApp, I wanted to get new stuff. I wanted to get to all flash, but, it doesn't fit into my current budget. I do have a lot of money this year. They call it COVID money, et cetera. And so we actually said, well, what you can do is you can get everything you want in your refresh in a cost per month or per year that fits easily within your budget, and the flexibility if budgets go up or down. Well, this became oh my gosh, that's exactly perfect, because given the variation in our planning, we might double, we might triple, but we may give some things away, et cetera. So this is the perfect environment. Anybody who knows federal or public sector realizes that they had to go through a public RFQ process. We won that. This was done in a matter of months, a couple of months. That just doesn't happen in the Fed. So it really met their needs, and we are seeing a lot of federal and public agencies, states, cities, all looking to, pay for what I use and pay for it in a budget manner. This is a financial organization. They actually had a strategy that said, we're actually going all in public cloud. Now, all in didn't mean all in, and then a third of 5,000 workloads, but that's significant. So what they did was they said, look, as far as, and again, I think this is NetApp, hey, we're not going to buy NetApp anymore because we're going to go to the cloud. So, making a CapEx purchase that has a 3 to 5 year lifespan makes no sense, and we won't approve that. So we said, well, what about this program? And they said, okay, this makes sense. This aligns to my cloud strategy, which is why we call this a good bridge to cloud. And so what they're doing is they're moving data centers, they're closing data centers, and they're putting stuff onto a Keystone-like agreement. What's interesting is at one point they said, okay, we've got some other stuff, because they were using NetApp for file, and it was, 5 or 8 petabytes, et cetera. We got 40 petabytes that we call tier 0, and initially they were like, oh no, well, I use another vendor for that. Well, now they're moving it all to the Keystone program. As a matter of fact, they're bringing in, this is essentially the way they're consuming. They're starting to consume compute this way. They're starting to consume data protection this way, and they're starting to consume all their data services and then bridging that into a cloud. So an example of an organization, again, a very sophisticated, large financial organization adopting all into the consumption model. Now, this is a global service provider. I believe this happens to be Pure. What they were doing is saying, look, we announced Pure as a service. That was one of the first products to get out publicly in the market. Again, everything you want to know about it, you can call us, or you can look even on their website, et cetera. But they realized that this client was going all in. They were using a software as a service or a storage as a service. Well, that wasn't meeting their needs because it just wasn't working that great. And so they kind of said, hey, I need to do this quickly, and I need to do this across 5 data centers in the U.S. and Europe. Who can do this? And so they called us, and they said, can you do this? And we said, not a problem. We quickly sized this because they were kind of in an emergency. And I think when you go and talk to the people at Pure, they realized that the fact that we could have project management, make sure it went on staggered rollout, everything was going across flawlessly. So that's an example of, again, managing, a fairly sophisticated, large environment across multiple data centers. And the last one, many organizations are saying, you know what, I don't want to buy anything. Maybe that's the organizational posture you have. It's like, okay, what are you doing? Well, I've got old stuff, and I'm just trying to get enough miles out of that until I can get to my transformational state, which could be cloud, it could be, something, but we're not making these big decisions right now. And so one of the things that faces many organizations is the concept of a support renewal. And anybody who's been in this business for a while knows that the older your equipment gets, the more it costs to support it. And so what we're seeing in many, many clients is that you can actually transition to an as-a-service model, maybe for less than a simple one-year support contract. That is something that we would be happy to review with you, given your specific environments. In this case, it was an organization that we were working very diligently with them, and they got a lot of stuff to the cloud, but they still had, a few petabytes left. It was in 3 data centers. It wasn't exactly the way they wanted it. So they said, well, what would it take to consolidate this down to two data centers, one system each, et cetera? And that ended up being over $1 million. And they're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that because it goes against our no CapEx model. But I'm looking at a bill for $500,000 just for the support of these systems in these different data centers. And then we presented them and said, well, we can get this all onto exactly what you wanted in a CapEx model. The architecture you wanted it, for, in this case, $300,000 a year. If you're just comparing buy versus Keystone, that's a fair comparison. If you're comparing going to an as-a-service model compared to just renewing your support, that kind of makes it a no-brainer. So that's where they ended up with that. So a little bit on the managed services. I think, it's common to look at managed services and say, well, do you need to completely change the way I operate my environment in order to deliver the service? So we really break this down into 2 levels of management. The first level is we'll manage the service. So we have what's called essential services. All of our partners know what our essential services are, whether it was AWS, Azure, Keystone, Pure as a Service, Cisco Plus, GreenLake, whatever it is. We always say, well, we're always going to take care of the billing. We're always going to assign a client success manager. They're going to do optimization. Like, did you realize these things were turned on? If you turn them off, you can save money, et cetera. 24/7 support, no matter what it is, et cetera. Those are basically the services that we provide that support the service itself. And optionally, you can say, well, I'd like you to take a more active management role. And so we can actually manage the environment. We can put it in a hosted environment. We can manage that relationship. So there's all kinds of things that we can do in the managed services over and beyond. In reality, the market, and it's not just us, we're seeing maybe 20% of our clients say, I want to change the way I operate. And 100% of those clients are saying, or the other 80% are saying, I just want to change the way I consume. I'll operate the way I was before. I just don't want to pay in a CapEx. I want the OpEx model. And so we're seeing 80% essential services equivalent across all of them. So if we add 3 different products into a converged service, et cetera, you'll see the same level of services across all of those. As you can start to see, the partners are buying into, these are the things we do as a service as they grow, et cetera. And then for those who want fully managed, absolutely easy to put in there. The fully managed is usually incremental cost. It might be, if you were paying, let's say, $100,000 a month for, a bunch of infrastructure services, for another 15% or something like that, it could be fully managed. So, but it is an additional full managed additional. So kind of what we're, summarizing what we were seeing in the market is that, as we started seeing this market really take off, and again, we were working with most of these partners before there was much of a market. If you looked at as a service 2 years ago, I highly recommend you look at it again, because there's been massive changes, both on how it's being provided, not just as a lease, not just as something they weren't getting into, but you're going to hear the logos on this page who all have partnerships with us You're going to hear when they do their earnings, this is the way we want to deliver our infrastructure. This is the way we're going to move our portfolio. This is the way we're going to help people do this. So that market's been adopting. Now, as we got going, and quite frankly, some of the storage guys were there first, just selling storage, what we saw was, I'm adopting the way I consume for storage, but I need to do it for more things. Can you, put me in a hosted environment, which is monthly? Can you give me compute this way, data protection this way, security this way? And so that's why our view is we'll help you manage all of these things or any combination of these things or one of these things as a common as a service model. It helps you adapt to the cloud consumption. And again, what we're seeing is that storage was first. All the compute guys are on board now. Networking is coming in a big way in the second half, and the data protection guys are getting there as well. So that's a summary. I think we'll be sending you the slides and doing some follow-up. But Juan, if you want to, maybe you could talk a little bit about summarizing and what some of the next steps are.
Yeah, thank you, Kent. So hopefully this was very useful for the audience. And you're actually looking for more, as Kent mentioned at the very beginning of this. We have a very neutral approach to this. There's a variety of ways of approaching this from a number of our partners. So the important thing is to really understand, does this model make sense for you first, and we'd be happy to help you through that. And we can then furthermore take a look at what does that really look like in a concrete way. So, hey, I need to buy storage, I need to buy an entire data center in this model. What will be the process? What will need to be moved? Can I do the migrations efficiently and all those other things? We can certainly help you with that. If you're familiar with us already, please reach out to your Insight field sales teams. Your entire team should be able to either talk to us directly or get some of our experts involved in that. And also feel free to reach out to us through insightcdct.com. There's a wealth of information on there on this and many other subjects, and there's also a contact form as well. And as if you're on this call, we certainly thank you for attending. There will be an Insight representative reaching back out to you, and feel free to ask for more help that way as well. So with that, I sincerely thank you all for attending. Apologies for the slight hiccup at the beginning of this. For whatever reason, the platform dropped me. Welcome to 2021, right? So thank you again. And Ken, thank you. Excellent job as usual.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ken and Juan. We appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for attending. An on-demand version of this webcast will be available within 2 to 3 days. You'll receive an email notification once that recording is available. So thank you again for participating in today's webcast.